People tend to view sexism as this sort of big, ugly beast that's obvious in the room. So, true story, when I was applying for residency, I went in and introduced myself to one of the interviewers at a program that will remain nameless. And he reached across the table and he shook my hand and he said, "What are you doing here? Women don't belong in surgery." And I have to say that that was the most direct form of sexism I've ever faced in my entire life. But most of the time, it doesn't look like that. Most of the time, I think what we're facing now is a form of implicit bias. We all have a picture in our head of what a leader looks like. And whether you're a man or you're a woman, in many ways, you're socialized to believe that the picture of a man is something that's a leader. You know, the tall man in the nice suit with the good, cultured voice or accent, that's what people view as a leader. And people don't necessarily understand how deeply some of that is ingrained in them, men and women alike. So when you're looking at a group of people, who's going to be the leader? People have intrinsic biases towards certain people or certain classes or people that look like them, and it often leaves women on the side. And there's a ton of research that's been done in the business world that looks at this, that looks at if you have only one or two women in a big candidate pool, they look less competent than they would if there were a few more women in the candidate pool. That's, I think, what we're facing a lot of now. Some of the way that we change these implicit biases is to have a lot of strong representative female leaders that you can look up to and say, this person looks like me, or this person looks different than what I expected a leader to look like, but is doing an amazing job. I mean, I was midway through my residency before I looked around and really appreciated that there was no one that looked like me in my department in leadership or even moving up in the chain. There was no chair, there was no division leader, there was no senior professor in my department that was a woman. And that was the first time it really stood out to me that, hey, like, why does nobody look like me? What's going on here? And I still don't necessarily have a completely full answer, but I know that a lot of us are working hard to change it. We have a long way to go. I mean, every year the AAMC publishes their faculty data for across the country in academic medicine. And the pipeline leaks at every level in every department, even departments that are female predominant nowadays. So obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, predominantly women faculty, and yet when you look at the senior leadership in those departments across the country, it's predominantly male. So people will argue that, oh, well, it's a pipeline issue. You just haven't waited long enough. The women are coming. But they're not actually. In many places, this has been equal for a long time, and yet we still have this attrition leading up to the highest levels. Even without promoting leadership, we need to promote sponsorship. And so people make the distinction. A mentor is someone who helps you decide what you want to do with your future. A sponsor is someone who helps open doors for you. And just sponsorship at any level is important. So although I'm fairly junior, I try hard to sponsor my residents and my junior faculty and say, I don't have time to do this thing, but his person over here, they would be an amazing person to do this. So sponsorship really opens doors and improves people's careers. I think that the other thing that we can do a lot of is making sure that we make a very focused effort to include women on search committees, to make sure that we have a gender distributed panel, again, to take some of that subconsciously, do they look like me bias out of the decision tree in determining who the next leaders will be. I have to say, I've been here a long time. I came here as a resident 15 years ago, and I think the changes are tremendous. I think we've seen a lot more accountability for professional behavior, which is really critical. We've seen a lot more awareness of what's going on with women and women's leadership. You know, the recent founding of our Women in Medicine and Science group is a great example of a change that we've had that's going to allow us to really support women in general. I think you have to recognize a problem before you can fix it. And I think finally it's on the forefront of people's minds. And we know that we have to make changes to keep up with the times.